Welcome to the Neighborhood Ford Store Steelers Extra Point, presented by BetMGM.
Al Michaels once said, "Do you believe in miracles?" Well, the Steelers needed a minor miracle today, and they got one. Welcome to the Extra Point Show here on Pittsburgh CW. Bob Pompeani and Chris Hoke with you today as the Steelers engineer a comeback. Ben Roethlisberger's career goes on for at least one more week as they win in dramatic fashion in overtime, but they needed Jacksonville to deliver a win. Indianapolis was awful today. Chris, everything worked out. Now, there's one thing left to happen. They cannot have a tie tonight in this game on Sunday Night Football. If it plays to a tie, the Steelers would not get in. But as of this moment, they are in, and it looks like they will be in. Amazing turnaround.
Amazing turnaround. You look at the first half, the Steelers could not move the ball. Ben struggled, couldn't hit a receiver. The second half, he was almost flawless and takes them into overtime and leads them down the field for his 53rd game-winning drive in his career, Bob. 7 this season. Think about that. About 14% of his game-winning drives in this season, his final year of his career.
How about that? And that is the most of any quarterback in the NFL this season on his swan song. At least we think so. They completed in overtime a 3rd and 7, then a 3rd and 8, then a 3rd and 9, and a 4th and 8 to get it done. And I'll tell you something, there have been people who've been critical of the draft selections of Najee Harris and Pat Freiermuth, but both of those guys came up big today, Chris.
Big. Freiermuth came up big this whole game, and to get Najee back late in the game, and that catch out of the backfield when he caught the ball, really reached up with one arm, was able to get down the sideline for a first down, and then late he was able to get another first down and move the chains again and get him within field goal range. 3 big plays in overtime, Bob, were from these young rookies, guys that people have been critical of this draft that are fixtures on this roster for the next decade.
So it looks like it'll be Pittsburgh if they get in, and if this happens, and it should, against Kansas City, and they'll clearly be a heavy underdog in that game. But the bottom line is they get a playoff position, it looks like at this point, because Tennessee wrapped up the #1 seed by winning today against Houston. We have a lot coming up. You're going to hear from Mike Tomlin, player interviews, reaction, and our analysis all coming up as we continue live right here. The Steelers come back and win 16-13. Roethlisberger outstanding down the stretch, fourth quarter and overtime. The season likely plays on. We'll be back with more right after this on Pittsburgh CW.
Welcome back to the Neighborhood Ford Store Steelers Extra Point, presented by BetMGM.
All right, we're back. Bob Pompeani, Chris Hoke, and here we are updated. These are your division winners and the top 4 there. The Titans will have the #1 seed. They get the only bye. The Chiefs will be the 2 seed. Bills and Bengals, the wild card at this point. Patriots and Steelers. But if the Chargers and Raiders do play to a tie tonight, it's unlikely, but you never know, they both get in and the Steelers would get out. But the winner of the game would also get into the playoffs. So that's how it is right now. And Chris Hoke, I can't say enough about Ben Roethlisberger in critical moments. You can say what you want about not the same, his mobility, but man, making critical plays at critical times. He did it. They moved the football when Tyler Huntley and the Ravens could not. Also a big day. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about T.J. Watt. Gets the 1 sack. I thought he could have had another. That one that he got and then they took away, Michael Strahan got one exactly like that over the course of his career. Yeah. And so maybe they'll change it.
TJ got one last week, Bobby. Think about it. When Baker slid and it looked like it was a gain for half yard, he was given a little present there as well. Okay. So you can give him to both of them.
Yeah, but as far as now, the Steelers have responded 9-7-1. They knew they had to win these last 2, and they did. And I can't say enough about, like I said, the 2 draft picks who, a lot of people thought the Steelers might have gone with an offensive lineman instead of Najee Harris. But, boy, that guy, and despite his injury, which I thought looked awful when it happened, Chris, he came back into the game, made some significant plays, and did not fumble this entire season. That's remarkable when you think of how many times he's carried the ball.
Remarkable for a rookie. But, Bob, I want to go back to Ben for a second. You talk about Ben. In the first half, Ben was 8 for 15 for 66 yards. 8 for 15, 66 yards. They could not get a first down in that first half. The second half, he comes back in overtime, 22 for 29, 178 yards, 1 TD. I mean, listen, he put the ball on the money most of the time in the second half in overtime. There were 2 drops in overtime. He continued to deliver. And we talk about the 7 game-winning drives in this season for Ben Roethlisberger. But let's talk about, that first half. The reason why is because the first half, the offense can't move the ball, and he's had to lead them back. It's just a tale of 2 halves. What a season for Ben to be a first-half Ben, and the second-half Ben is how he's been throughout his career.
All right, Mike Tomlin will be in the media room here shortly, and we will take you there for his post-game comments. Right now, they're waiting for him. We'll take a break, and when we come back, you're going to hear from Mike Tomlin and the rest of the Steelers. Actually, we'll stay right here. We're not going to go to a break. We'll wait for Mike Tomlin to come out. In the meantime, like I said, the Steelers came back, and you're right, in that second half, 22 of 29. That's pretty remarkable because the Ravens were doing a good job. I think they understood the Steelers were going to throw underneath quite a bit. I thought the Steelers needed to extend the field a little bit more, go down the field more because this Ravens defense, pass-wise, is 32nd in the NFL. I thought maybe spread them out a little bit more. They never did that, and it took them a while to get going. But clearly the Steeler defense, even though they got lashed for over 80-some yards on the ground, they made plays when they had to make plays.
Yeah, and you talk about trying to throw the ball down the field and stretching the field, Bob, but the reality is Ben can't hold on to the ball that long. Number one, they're not going to block long enough for him to do that. But number two, Ben's not like he was in his prime where he could run around, manipulate the pocket, step up in, roll out, and buy time for the guys to get down the field. And so that's the reason why they can't throw the ball down the field. The only time he does is when he lobs it up in the air to chase Claypool down the field. And so that's why they can't stretch the field. And the Ravens, they knew this. That's why they were up there at the line of scrimmage. They were not going to let the Steelers run the football, and they were just going to keep everything in front of them. But Ben continued to dink and dunk, chip away at him. And Deontay Johnson, you cannot say enough about him. His route running is perfection.
Yeah, a couple of those times where he sold it going inside, cut outside, and he created a lot of separation, and that's what you have to do if you're him. He's had a really good season considering what happened last year with all the drops. He cleaned that up to a large degree and has become the number one guy. Although I would say Ray McCloud, I got to give him props here. A lot of people thought too much Ray, but yet on the kickoff and punt return teams, he made 2 significant. In fact, before to set up the score before the end of regulation, it was a 23-yard return that took the ball to the 50-yard line. And those are big plays. Those are kinds of plays that change the field position, and they took advantage of that and turned it into points, Chris.
Absolutely. And you talk about 2 big plays that set up that final drive at the end of regulation when the Steelers went down and scored on that touchdown was, number one, was that 3rd and 1, where the Steelers D-line inverted the line of scrimmage and stuffed the Ravens on 3rd and 1, which they weren't able to do this whole game. And then that return by Ray bringing it to midfield, allowing the Steelers to take that short field and march down the field and score that touchdown. Just a great sequence of events. Really, it's each unit within that team, special teams, offense, defense, Bob, complementing each other, allowing them to go down and tie this or take the lead here. They gave up that field goal, but bring it into overtime and allow them to win the game.
Yeah, they did. So they end 9-7-1, and for the moment in the playoffs, it looks like they'll end up in the playoffs. It'll be a long shot if there's a tie in this game tonight. Yeah. And if there is, a lot of people will be calling for an investigation. Let's take a look at some of the summary around the NFL today and the game summary, because the Steelers, here it is, they trailed early through 3 quarters. You can see this 10-6, and they weren't doing much, just a couple of field goals. But all of a sudden, the 3rd down conversions came to life, and that's all Roethlisberger making it happen. A couple of nice routes by Deontay Johnson, as you described. The good punt return by McCloud of 23 yards set up 1, 2, 3 3rd down conversions, and then in overtime, 3 third downs and a 4th down conversion. Those are the most important things. Mike Tomlin is now in the media room. Let's take you to M&T Bank Stadium.
About the men in that locker room, man, their collective will, it was on display. It was on display throughout. Hostile environment today, obviously, dire circumstances and so forth. A lot of competition in stadium, distractions potentially on the outside of the stadium, man. They were able to process all of that and make the necessary plays to secure victory. I'm just appreciative of it, and particularly just some of those young ones. You know, Najee sustained an elbow injury, was able to get himself back into the game and make significant plays for us. Pat had an opportunity to get a 1st down. He came up a little bit short in terms of lacking a little awareness there, and we had to punt the ball. He came back and made a significant play. Ray had an opportunity to secure a field goal position there for us. In overtime, he didn't. He came back and made a play. The growth and development of these young guys throughout this journey and the negativity that's usually associated with growth and development did not take away from their efforts. They smiled in the face of it, and I'm just appreciative of that. And obviously, I'm appreciative of our quarterback, QB1. He's been smiling in the face of adversity for 18 years, and so even though it's not surprising, it's still appreciated. The turnovers were significant. We needed them. Whenever we come in here, we better win the turnover battle. We're not getting out of the stadium unless we do. I'm just thankful of their efforts, and I'll stop talking.
Mike, what does it say about your football team? You struggle offensively, you struggle defensively, you run defensively when you have to, you make the plays, and you fight back like you have at the end.
You know, that's been our story all year, man. You guys buried us when we were 1-3. You know, man, we got a lot of warts, but we're here, and that's been our position since September, and so I'm just appreciative of that mental fortitude being displayed by those men in that locker room.
Mike, what can you say about TJ tying the NFL sacks record?
Man, what can you say about TJ that hadn't already been said?
Anyone else?
How strange is it knowing that you're probably in, but there is a chance that it could go the other way?
I am not worried about it one iota. We had a job to do in our stadium today, and we did it. And so, you know, we're prepared to deal with whatever the consequences are, the other things that are outside our control. We gave that up maybe weeks ago, you know. And so what we needed to get done today, we did it. And they should be proud of that.
When did you become aware of the Jacksonville, Indianapolis scoring that outcome?
We were aware of it throughout the game.
You said you're not surprised, obviously, about Ben, but what does that say, just what he did in the fourth quarter and overtime?
You know, I mean, I understand what you guys mean when you ask me about TJ and Ben, but, man, you guys know the answers to that. Man, they are who they are, and we're very appreciative. We don't take it for granted. We recognize that it is unique, but we've been looking at it for some time, and so we expect it, but it's still appreciated. Their efforts, their talents, their will, their competitive spirit, the things that make them who they are, that produces the statistics or the performances that we all enjoy.
Mike, what did you think about going for it on the possession before fourth down when Rivalry was just a little bit short there?
No, I really wasn't. I was just disgusted that he didn't get the first down.
What was Boswell's distance? What was the distance?
We'll never know, will we?
When you talk about Ben turning it on, TJ turning it, Ben specifically, in these big moments, does he get more amped up, or do you feel like he just gets a calmness to him?
He's the same when everybody else gets funny. You know what I mean? Everybody else gets a little tight.
Mike, what was it like coaching in overtime, knowing that a tie would do you no good?
I don't live like that. I was focused on winning the game.
Coach, you said about young guys stepping up. Well, today Claypool kind of stepped up for you guys after maybe a few tough weeks. What does it kind of say about him and his maturation overall?
It's all of them. It's all of them. I took a moment to identify some, but you know, we got a lot of young guys out there making significant contributions and plays, and they have been. And it hadn't always been pretty or perfect, but that's just how it goes. I mean, how about guys like LeGlue? You just can't say enough about the efforts of these men.
You guys in COVID list, some of them played more than others. That's just case by case.
We were just, you know, just depending on where they were and how COVID affected them in terms of their pitch count. And so it was a bunch of individual decisions that had to be made, and we were just trying to do what was best. More than anything, we wanted to have all our parts at the end, at the significant moments. And so if we were a little cautious initially in terms of some of those guys' participation, it was done so in an effort to ensure that we had them at the end.
Guys, two more for Coach.
Mike, how did the divisional labor between you and Carl Austin go?
I'm not going to peel back the curtain. I'm appreciative of all of the defensive coaches. It was a big-time collective effort in terms of minimizing the absence of Keith Butler, man. We appreciate their efforts, and we look forward to getting back to Keith and getting him back in the fold ASAP.
Final one.
Mike, you knew you kind of had to win 3 of the last 4. What's the feeling in the locker room? Is it satisfaction? Is it elation? What?
You know, you can't describe it. You know, you got to be a part of a group like that, and then you know what it is. Just know it's special, it's sweet. It wasn't 3 out of 4. You know, we had to win 3 individually or whatever. You know, that was our focus, man. We're living week to week, and we did what we had to do.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Mike Tomlin, happy, annoyed, agitated at times. 1-3, you guys buried us. We have a lot of warts. They do have warts. They're not many perfect football teams, Chris. I sat around and watched a lot of games today, and I saw the Colts develop warts that I never knew they had in Jacksonville, and some other things as well. So this is not a perfect league, although the assignment next week for the Steelers will be going to Kansas City, and that is going to be a difficult assignment, as we saw earlier this year.
Yeah, it was the blowout last time the Steelers went out to Arrowhead. And you're right, every team in the NFL has warts, just some have more than others. But it doesn't matter at the end of the day. The Steelers, their goal every year is first to get into the playoffs. And so that's what they did. They're going to get in the playoffs, and let's see what happens. You never know.
You never know. When we come back, you're going to hear from T.J. Watt, who tied Michael Strahan's record. Some thought he might have eclipsed it. It was that kind of day. You're watching The Extra Point live right here on Pittsburgh's CW.
Welcome back to the Neighborhood Ford Store Steelers Extra Point, presented by BetMGM.
We are back as the Steelers not only get a spot in the playoffs, you would think, I got to be cautious about that because it could still be a tie tonight. That's highly unlikely, and quite frankly, like I said, would set off an investigation. But they also eliminated Baltimore. That has to make it better for them just because of this rivalry, as intense as it is. And it's the final game, and it's finally, Chris, Ben Roethlisberger is the last link to so many of those great Baltimore-Pittsburgh matchups that you were a part of.
Yep.
So many great players, so many great plays. He's the last link to it, and wouldn't it be amazing if he did what he did? And he did it today. He was the guy who engineered the comeback in fourth quarter, in overtime, as his last opportunity in this rivalry.
Listen, his first start out in Baltimore, like you said, Bob, and now his last start before the playoffs. But we'll go to Ben right here and let him describe this in his own words, Bob.
He's there. Let's go to there now.
Do you expect anything different in this rivalry at this place? And it's special. I mean, anytime you can come to this place and get a win, people always ask me where's my least favorite place to play, and it's always Baltimore. And it's for a couple reasons. One, because of how good the team usually is in the defense. This place is always crazy loud, and the fans are ruthless, which I think is that's a compliment, to this place and how hard it is to play here. So it's pretty special to get the win.
Ben, how did you guys, you've been doing it all year, you struggle, but when you have to, you make the plays, and I did it again today. We
just like to stress people out early, all you guys and all our fans at home. I have no idea. I think it shows something about this team, though, that you can continue to fight and never give up. And, you guys have asked me a million times, those of you that are in Pittsburgh, why, what's the issue? I don't know, but, it'd be nice to figure it out now.
And on the winning drive, third down, and then the fourth down to Ray. Can you just talk about the plays? One was the prior move on the sideline.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great catch by Pat. And then coming back on the fourth down, we went to the sideline, and Pat was kind of saying, hey, we actually called a play for him to break out. And he kept telling us, hey, they're playing out, So I said, hey, listen, on this play, instead of breaking out, break in. Let's see what happens. And they give us the worst look. I mean, if he'd have broke out, it would have been good. And Ray was coming right behind him. And as I stepped up, Big Calais was right there to bat. He reminded me how close he was to batting it down too. But Ray reached down and caught it, and I just think that to me it's so special. I mean, earlier in that drive, Ray had I hate to call it a drop, but it's to come back like that, to make a play. I mean, he came in this locker room and guys were hugging him, and I love giving a guy an opportunity like that, and for Ray to make that play to give us a chance to win it is special.
How about the one? How did Deontay get so wide open coming across? That was a third down play too.
Was that the one on our sideline?
Yes.
We called a return route. He'd been running that quick shallow route, and I've said, till I'm blue in the face, Deontay in and out of breaks is unguardable, and he put his foot in the ground and returned right out of there. And I had tunnel vision. I had a pretty good idea I was going there the whole time.
Ben, you knew this could be your last game. I'm sure maybe at points during the game. Did you think about that? And now it's not your last game. How does that?
It was crazy because my dad actually texted me last night, and asked how I was doing. I said, fine. It didn't feel, for whatever reason, it didn't feel like, okay, this is it. I think last week was so much more emotional. It took it all out, and it just made me feel like, let's go play. So it never, at no point during this game did I think, man, this is it. It's almost over. It just didn't feel like that, and I'm glad I didn't have those feelings.
Is the family here today?
No, just some friends.
Ben, could you just describe what does this rivalry between the Steelers and Ravens mean to you personally?
Oh, I told a lot of those guys I am not going to miss playing them. This game is against them specifically. Football is already a very violent game, but playing these guys has always been one where you wake up on Monday morning, whatever the next day is, and you're hurting. And it's never dirty. It's just good old-fashioned football. And someone on the sideline asked me if this is how these games always go, and I could only think of one or two times where it wasn't something like this. And in all the games that I've played against these guys, I'm so thankful for this rivalry and thankful for the games and the players that I've gotten to play against in this rivalry, and just proud that we were able to get it today.
All right, that's Ben Roethlisberger, 22 of 29, 178 yards in the second half. And we have to apologize, too. The fogginess you saw on your screen, that's what happens when they only allow one photographer in, and he's been out in the cold all day. When you come in, there's a steam component, and that's pretty much what you saw there. However, you knew it was Ben Roethlisberger, and he stays on to play another game. And this is according to Pro Football Reference. Now, this is the number for fourth quarter comebacks. It's different than game-winning drives. He has 52, now 53 game-winning drives in his career. Most fourth quarter comebacks, overtime comebacks, Roethlisberger, 1 behind Brady, 2 behind Manning all time. He's also number 5 all time in wins. I mean, the resume is just right there. Surefire, first ballot Hall of Famer. And Chris, to me, that's how you define someone who is, the best of what he does in those situations. You may have a tough start, but how he finishes some of these games. And now this year's 7 comeback wins in the fourth quarter, that's the most of anybody in the NFL.
Ever in the NFL. And listen, I played with Ben Roethlisberger for 7 seasons, and we knew if we had an opportunity, if we had the ball with time on the clock, we had an opportunity to win. And so defensively, we just wanted to get the ball back into his hands so he could drive the ball down the field, and he was giving us an opportunity. I mean, 2 of the touchdowns, the Super Bowls, he scored touchdowns there at the end of the game. And so he's just a phenomenal quarterback, just adding to his epic career with this comeback win, the fourth quarter win. And I'll tell you what, he is cementing more and more of just iconic play and quarterback in the history of the Steelers lore.
It really is. Steelers win 16-13, and they will likely move on to take on the Chiefs in Arrowhead Stadium next week in the first round of what should be a wacky wild card weekend. Remember now, 1 extra team involved, so there's only 1 bye. That goes to Tennessee. Kansas City must play, and they will play Pittsburgh unless there's a tie tonight. We got a lot more to talk about and break down when we continue. You're watching your neighborhood Ford store Steelers Extra Point presented by BetMGM.
Welcome back to the neighborhood Ford store Steelers Extra Point presented by BetMGM.
Steelers get a win. They move on. T.J. Watt goes into the record book, tying Michael Strahan 22.5 sacks, even though he only played in 14 games this year. He's at the podium right now. Let's hear what T.J. had to say following a big win for the Steelers.
I mean, it's a cool feeling. You put so much hard work into this, and it's an awesome feeling to win a game when you absolutely have to, and it has playoff implications.
That sack you had right before halftime looked like you were hugging, high-fiving guys afterward. Did you think that you had broken the record at that point or tied the record?
I don't know. I don't want to get into it. I was just happy to get another one and add it to the list.
We've asked you a lot about Ben over the last couple of weeks. To watch that final drive, can you kind of take us through that emotion?
Yeah, I mean, anytime 7 has the ball and we have an opportunity to either tie or go up in the game, we always feel very confident in not only him, but just the whole offense. I mean, a lot of guys stepped up, made plays tonight, and it's something that we see, and those guys practice every single week, the 2-minute drill, and great to see them be able to drive down the field and get a score.
So how does it feel? What does it mean for you to be at the top of the list in the NFL, breaking time and sack records?
I mean, it's definitely a cool feeling. Like I said, I don't know if any of it's really hit me. It's not just myself. There's so many great players and coaches and schemes and a lot of selfless guys in that locker room that allow me to make plays. So it's not, that record isn't just mine.
How much interaction you have with Ben during the game? But was his demeanor different at all today, knowing that reflective was on the line?
I don't know. Everybody's so involved in the game, you don't really have time to talk about stuff like that. Just kind of playing football.
TJ, when did you find out they took that sack away from you?
I'd say in the second half at some point, someone told me.
How aware were you throughout the game of the outcome of the Colts-Jaguars game?
I mean, they played it on the screen a lot in there, so it was pretty hard not to be aware of it. And things were going in the right direction. We just knew we had to stay the course and play some good football in order to give ourselves a chance to make sure that game mattered.
When you think of the arc of this season, the ups, the downs, the everything, what is the statement on this team that you are here still standing?
We still have a pulse if you give us a chance. If you get us into the dance, anything can happen, and that's kind of where we're at right now. So hungrier than ever, want to continue to keep playing football, want to continue to make plays, and a lot of guys in there trying to get into the facility as soon as they can tomorrow to watch the film for today and move forward.
Yes, TJ Watt in the record books. There was a lot of talk that maybe he had the record, originally credited with the sack on a miscue by Tyler Huntley. He fumbled the ball, picked it up, and Watt nailed him as a forced fumble. So that, if that stood, he would have had the record. As it is 22 and a half. And I wonder who's actually in charge of making those calls in the press box or who's watching. But officially for right now, it's TJ Watt and Michael Strahan, all-time records. You see some big names on that list from Justin Houston, Jared Allen, Mark Gastineau back in the day. But 22 and a half, that'll live for a long time. And boy, again, doing it in only 14 games. You know, Chris, and when you look at a situation like Kansas City coming up, Kansas City had a problem at the beginning of the season with turnovers. Yeah. Plays like TJ Watt can make in playoff games can change a lot of what goes on there. So even though the Steelers will be and should be heavy underdogs in this game, you never know what you're going to get with game-changing plays.
Every game's different, Bob, and that's why you play them. And last time the Steelers went into Arrowhead, they were blown out at halftime. The game was over. This time they will have Travis Kelce, it looks like, unless something changes. And so they'll have one more, the best tight end in football out there. But the Steelers, they're going to go out there and play. They're going to put their best effort out there. And I'll tell you what, anything can happen when you go out and play football. Turn the ball over. Like you said, Mahomes has turned the ball over a lot throughout this season, so anything can happen. Yeah, and I got to give another play we haven't talked about, and we should, and that would be Minkah Fitzpatrick with a big hit on Marquise Brown. That would have been, they ended up having to punt because that was ruled incomplete, and it was. Had he not made that hit, that would have been a big gainer for them, and who knows how it would have turned out at the end of regulation. We got to take a break. When we come back, more analysis, more reaction, and then we will take some of your phone calls as well. We're live right here on Pittsburgh CW, the Steelers, 9-7-1, looking like they're playoff bound.
Welcome back to the Neighborhood Ford Store Steelers Extra Point, presented by BetMGM.
Chase Claypool went to Twitter and said, "Thank you, Jaguars." And Chris, I watched that game. I couldn't believe how bad Indy was in a must-win against a 2-14 team. It's a wacky NFL these days.
Yeah, just turning the ball over. I mean, Carson Wentz, who really had a good season this year, bouncing back from a bad year last year with the Eagles and coming out and throwing those turnovers and the Jaguars. And then, I mean, how well did they play offensively going out there and moving the ball and putting on those points on a Colts team that needed this win, and they were in.
So as we take a look at the JP Roofing final stats, if I would have told you before this game the Ravens will rush for 249 yards against the Steelers, you would have said what, Chris?
I would have said, I believe it, because that's what the Ravens do. They love to run the football, and they have a quarterback who, coming into this game, was averaging more yards per carry than Lamar Jackson. So yeah, I would have said yes.
Yeah, but it didn't result in a win because the Steelers limited their passing options. And you see the other thing, turnovers. That's always going to be a key. And the Steelers, when they do well, for that matter, any team, when you win that battle, you normally are in the game. At the very least, you normally win the game as well. And again, Kansas City has tightened it up. But I'll tell you, you even watched them yesterday against Denver. Denver team, which fired its head coach today, Vic Fangio, they were in a position to win the game, if not for a turnover forced by Melvin Ingram at the end of the game and an 86-yard return. So Kansas City wasn't all that sharp yesterday either.
They weren't that sharp, and they battled the whole game. You talk about what a trade. Melvin Ingram, what a pickup for the Chiefs to have that pickup for a touchdown to win that game. And again, it's playoff time now, right? You're going to have the Chiefs are going to elevate their game level. The Steelers are going to elevate their game level, and it's going to be fun to watch in this game. And, when you go back to this Ravens game, Bob, and we talk about about the Steelers-Ravens rivalry. I mean, it's just fitting to end this way in overtime with a kick to put them away. And I think at the end of the day, this is what's going to be talked about, is the Steelers being able to kick the field goal there at the end to put the knife in the back of the Ravens, and will echo in eternity with the Steeler-Ravens lore.
And the Ravens lose their final 6 games in a row after starting the season 8-3, and all 6 of those games were down to the last possession.
Yeah.
That's crazy to think about. All right, when we come back, you're going to hear from the money man, Chris Boswell. That's why they pay him the big bucks, because he doesn't get on the field all that much, but when he does, it's normally game on the line, and he produced today. Back in a flash.
Welcome back to the Neighborhood Ford Store Steelers Extra Point, presented by BetMGM.
Now we're back as we take a look at the road ahead. These are just some of the dates that we'll be focused on in the future. The Senior Bowl coming up, the NFL Combine, March 6th, free agency begins, and the Steelers have a lot of money to begin there. And then the draft, of course, April 28th through the 30th. That will be interesting as well. Right now, Chris Boswell's at the microphone after hitting the game-winning field goal.
No, I don't really spend too much time on that. Whatever happens in the game. I'm not going to try to, look to the future or try to predict what's going to happen. I mean, if they need a kick, they need a kick. And if we don't, then I'm fine with that too, as long as we get a win.
Chris, knowing what was at stake, of course, and fighting back, what was it like for you to, after all you guys have been through, for you to send him into the playoffs with that kick?
I'm just happy, for Ben. If this is his last year, we're sending him to the playoffs. And, this team deserves it, and we've been battling our asses off. And, I'm just here to do my job and kick it through the pipes, and I was fortunate enough to do that tonight.
How much was that in the back of your mind today, knowing that this could be Ben's final game with you guys having a chance to extend the season?
It's a lot of talk, from outside looking in. But we came here to win the game, and, whatever happened after that, whatever the chips fell in what order, really wasn't on my mind the entire day, the entire game. And, it's cool to look back and kind of have that importance now, but it's not something I ever think about during a game or leading up to a game.
What were the conditions out there like? I noticed Cook and Tucker really going over the turf before his game.
Yeah, conditions were great. It rained, wet, soggy field. Baltimore has a beautiful field here, and, that's really all about it.
What was your range, on that 4th down? Could you have been sent out for that really long kick? Or
I could have been sent out for sure. It's just whether it goes in or not, it just kind of depends on the kick. I'm not going to sit here and say I had it, 100%. I would have given my best shot, and whatever happened. So,
Are they you asking you at that point, Tomlin?
No, that's kind of, their decision, and as soon as they yell field goal, I'm out on the field, and if not, just stay right on the sideline.
Chris, we often ask quarterbacks.
Chris, that was the interesting take there. I'm looking at that. It was 4th and 8, and they were in dangerous territory right around midfield. It would have been a 61-yard field goal. We had a discussion here in the studio about whether or not they should have kicked it. I think he would have made it, but that's a tough one, because if you don't convert on 4th 8, which the Steelers did to Ray McCloud, it would have been Baltimore ball in very, very advantageous position.
Very, very advantageous position. I tell you, I liked going for it there rather than kicking the field goal, because the chances of him making that are very, very slim, Bob. I always look at it. We're over 40 yards. To me, it's a 50-50 shot largely throughout the NFL. And I love his demeanor there. Don't you love his demeanor? He just hey, listen, he's singularly focused. If they call my number, I'm going to go out there and kick. If they don't, hey, as long as we win, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to do my job. And I love that attitude and that demeanor of Chris Boswell. And that's why he's been so successful throughout his career.
Got to have a short memory. There's no question about that. Anybody in athletics who's in that position where you're kicking that way and everything's on the table, you got to have a short memory. Forget it if it doesn't work. All right. Steelers end up winning. Chris, hang around. We're going to do a special edition of the Sports Call coming up where we're going to take your calls. And I'm very interested to hear what you have to say about the way they finished and looking ahead to Kansas City. So call us. That's coming up next. Steelers win 16-13. They finished the regular season 9-7-1. And unless there's a tie tonight, they're headed to Kansas City next week. We'll be back with those calls next.